One of England's richest bachelors arrives in the countryside, but the woman who changes him has neither title nor fortune. Mr. Darcy takes great pride in his rank, and keeps everyone at a careful distance. Even his closest friend notices his reserve, but Darcy never explains himself. What he never expects is for Elizabeth Bennet to overhear a cruel remark. He dismisses her in a private exchange with Bingley, wounding her pride without realizing it. That insult plants the first seed of prejudice. From that moment, Elizabeth decides she wants nothing to do with such an arrogant man, but fate has other plans for them. The story opens in rural England 2 centuries earlier. The Bennets have 5 daughters, and no son to inherit the family estate. By the inheritance rules of the time, Longbourn cannot pass directly to any of the Bennet sisters. When their father dies, the women could lose both their home and security. Finding suitable husbands for her daughters becomes Mrs. Bennet's consuming obsession. A local assembly offers the perfect chance. Music and dancing bring strangers together, especially when the newest guest is the wealthy, charming Mr. Bingley, accompanied by his close friend, Mr. Darcy. Darcy earns £10,000 a year, an enormous fortune for the period. A precise modern equivalent is impossible, but it places him among England's elite. Naturally, Darcy draws attention the moment he enters, yet for all his dazzling wealth, he is quiet and guarded. His stern expression makes him seem unapproachable. Uneasy among strangers, he stands apart from the crowd, and refuses to dance with women he does not know. He judges the room by rigid standards, and his reserve looks like arrogance. To the people of Meryton, he seems unbearably arrogant. That first impression drives his early conflict with Elizabeth. Bingley, by contrast, is instantly captivated by gentle, beautiful Jane. They move happily across the dance floor, as if the evening had been arranged just for them. Darcy lingers at the edge of the room, occasionally glancing in Elizabeth's direction. At first, he fails to see her appeal. His feelings grow only after he knows her better. When Bingley urges him to ask Elizabeth to dance, Darcy hides his discomfort behind a cold reply. He calls her tolerable, but not pretty enough to tempt him. Bingley does not realize Elizabeth is standing close enough to hear every word. The remark is casually cruel, though Darcy never meant the whole room to hear it. Elizabeth masks her embarrassment by turning the insult into a joke. Later, she meets Darcy with sharp wit, taking pleasure in teasing the man who spoke so badly of her. The exchange also lets Darcy see how unusual she is. Elizabeth is not impressed by rank, has no desire to flatter rich men, and refuses to treat marriage like a business deal. Back at Longbourn, Jane is still glowing from her time with Bingley. She sees nothing but goodness in him, though she fears he may not feel the same. As for Darcy, Elizabeth insists that she would rather never speak to that arrogant man again. Jane's fears soon prove unfounded. The next morning, an invitation arrives from Netherfield, asking her to dine with Caroline Bingley. Oddly, it comes from Bingley's sister, who says her brother will dine elsewhere. Even so, Mrs. Bennet sees an opportunity. She reads the situation at once, though not as Caroline intends. Jane is invited alone, and storm clouds are already gathering. Mrs. Bennet sends her on horseback, knowing the rain will trap her there for the night. That way, even if Bingley misses dinner, he can still spend time with Jane afterward. The plan works better than expected. Jane falls ill, and remains at Netherfield for several days. Mrs. Bennet is secretly delighted, but Elizabeth worries only about Jane. With no carriage available, she crosses the muddy fields on foot. She arrives with windblown hair and a mud-stained dress, yet Darcy cannot stop watching her. Elizabeth quickly goes upstairs to Jane, while Darcy watches her leave. His attraction is hard to hide, and even her mud-stained appearance strikes him as natural and beautiful. Jane soon begins to recover. She was never in serious danger, and Bingley is glad to let her stay. Mrs. Bennet decides the match is nearly certain. While Jane recovers, Elizabeth remains at Netherfield, under the same roof as Darcy. She once swore never to speak to him, but his stiff manners keep drawing her into sharp exchanges. Her dislike of him only deepens. Caroline Bingley also targets Elizabeth, mocking her family and social standing. Elizabeth answers with a polite smile. Caroline has 2 reasons. She wants Darcy's attention, and she wants to drive off anyone she considers beneath her. As Bingley's unmarried sister, she hopes to make a prestigious marriage with Darcy, but unfortunately for her, Darcy Darcy shows little interest in her flirting. Whenever Elizabeth is present, his attention shifts toward her. That realization feeds Carolyn's jealousy. Elizabeth is embarrassed again when Mrs. Bennet arrives, and loudly praises Jane's chances with Bingley. Even Elizabeth wants to disappear. While the room struggles to hide its discomfort, her younger sisters beg Bingley to host a ball at Netherfield. Bingley is kind-hearted and genuinely fond of Jane. He gladly promises to hold one, and personally escorts the Bennets to their carriage. As a gentleman, Darcy offers Elizabeth his hand as she steps into the carriage. The gesture itself is perfectly proper, but their brief touch catches both of them off guard. Elizabeth thinks little of it, while Darcy is visibly shaken. He had reached for her almost instinctively. After she leaves, he flexes the hand she touched, still feeling the contact. The silent gesture shows how deeply his feelings unsettle him. While the Bennets celebrate Jane's prospect, an unexpected guest arrives at Longbourn. He is Mr. Bennet's distant cousin, Mr. Collins, and the future heir to Longbourn. Collins has come, hoping to marry one of the Bennet daughters. In his own mind, marrying a Bennet daughter would make amends for his eventual inheritance. After Mr. Bennet's death, he believes marrying a Bennet cousin will keep the estate connected to the family, while giving him the respectable wife he thinks he deserves. To Collins, the arrangement is flawless. He never notices how pompous and ridiculous he sounds. He constantly boasts about his connection to the upper class, filling every conversation with praise for his patron, Lady Catherine. His lack of self-awareness embarrasses everyone. Because his income and position are respectable, Mrs. Bennet ignores his personality. Collins is no more selective. Elizabeth does not know. Her mother is already planning a marriage between them. She continues her usual walks through Meryton, where she soon meets another man. Lieutenant George Wickham is a handsome militia officer, and his uniform instantly draws attention. More importantly, he is charming, polished, and easy to talk to. He knows how to earn trust quickly. Next to Darcy's reserve and Collins' vanity, Wickham seems refreshingly open. Elizabeth soon decides he may be a genuinely honorable man. Meryton is a small town, and within days, Wickham encounters Darcy and Bingley on the street. Elizabeth's younger sisters make the introductions, and urge Bingley to invite Wickham to the Netherfield ball. When Darcy and Wickham see one another, the tension between them is immediate. Their faces reveal a painful history. Darcy says nothing and leaves at once. Elizabeth notices the exchange, and asks Wickham what happened. He eagerly tells his side. Wickham says his father managed Pemberley, and that he grew up alongside Darcy. He claims the late Mr. Darcy treated him like a son. Before the elder Mr. Darcy died, he intended to give Wickham with a valuable church position. Wickham claims Darcy ignored that wish, and gave the living to someone else. He casts himself as the victim of Darcy's jealousy and cruelty, while omitting the choices that expose his deceit. Because Elizabeth already dislikes Darcy, she accepts the story without question. Wickham's supposed mistreatment wins even more sympathy from her. Soon, the long-awaited Netherfield ball begins. Elizabeth searches for Wickham, hardly noticing Darcy watching her. Wickham is nowhere to be seen, and Mr. Collins claims her first dance, out of politeness, and with no enthusiasm. Elizabeth agrees. Collins is a painfully awkward partner. His movements are stiff, his timing is poor, and he repeatedly crowds her. Elizabeth can barely endure it. Collins tries to keep her attention, but her thoughts remain on Wickham. She assumes he stayed away to avoid Darcy. Collins might as well be invisible. Elizabeth barely hears him. Then Darcy approaches, and formally asks for the next dance. His manner is so solemn that she accepts before thinking. She cannot find a graceful excuse, despite having sworn never to like him. Elizabeth cannot imagine why Darcy wants to dance with her. Their conversation soon becomes a duel. Inevitably, she brings up Wickham. An elegant dance turns into a battle without swords. They circle like wary opponents, weighing every word. Darcy tightens at Wickham's name, while Elizabeth's expression reveals the verdict she has already reached. Neither is willing to yield. The music continues, and their steps remain flawless, but the dance has become a confrontation concealed by perfect manners. When the final note ends, Darcy releases her hand and bows. Elizabeth returns the courtesy. Every movement follows proper etiquette, leaving no public sign of conflict. Yet both know that neither has changed the other's mind. Her prejudice and his pride only deepen. Elizabeth tries to escape, but Collins blocks her again. Eager to impress her, he decides to flaunt his connections to important people. He approaches Darcy, and launches into an embarrassingly formal introduction. Collins completely misreads the moment, and Elizabeth, as his cousin, shares the humiliation. Scanning the ballroom, she realizes Carolyn's criticism is not entirely wrong. Mary has taken over the piano, and keeps singing after everyone loses interest. Kitty and Lydia run wild, laughing and chasing officers through the crowd. Mrs. Bennet loudly predicts Jane's marriage. Fortunately, Bingley notices none of it. His attention remains fixed on Jane. Elizabeth is certain that he has fallen deeply in love with her sister. Charlotte, however, warns her Jane may hide her feelings too well. Their social positions are already unequal, and hesitation leaves room for interference. Yet too much openness could damage Jane's reputation. She is caught between caution and honesty. The celebration continues late into the night. As Jane leaves, Bingley watches her with unmistakable regret. Before the family can recover, Collins creates another scene. He asks to speak with Elizabeth alone. Mrs. Bennet instantly understands his intention, and sends everyone else from the room. Only then does Elizabeth realize her mother has encouraged the proposal. Her protests are ignored. Collins begins a clumsy, rehearsed speech. Elizabeth now faces exactly what she has always feared, a marriage without love, offered as though her consent hardly matters. Collins fully expects her acceptance. He delivers the proposal like a ceremony, as if his word were a priceless gift. He assumes his position makes refusal impossible. It never occurs to him that love might matter. To Collins, the proposal itself is generous. Simply by offering marriage, he believes he has already earned her gratitude. Because Collins is a guest, Elizabeth refuses as gently as possible. Inside, however, she is overwhelmed, not by feeling, but by the absurdity of his confidence. Some proposals are made without love, simply because society says it is time to marry. Any suitable woman will do. Collins is not intentionally cruel. He is simply too shallow to see how little he offers, or why Elizabeth could never value it. He cannot see how foolish he looked. Worse, Mrs. Bennet shares many of Collins' assumptions. She appeals to Mr. Bennet, hoping he will force Elizabeth to agree. Mr. Bennet often avoids the practical troubles of his household, but he cares deeply for Jane and especially Elizabeth. He knows what a loveless marriage can become, because his own is deeply unhappy, so he respects Elizabeth's judgment and her right to choose. Poverty may be frightening, but a lifetime with someone she cannot respect would be worse. The upheaval is far from over. Without warning, Bingley's entire party leaves Netherfield. Caroline writes to Jane, hinting that Bingley may marry Georgiana Darcy instead. The news devastates Jane. She begins to question whether Bingley ever loved her. Elizabeth immediately suspects Caroline's interference. She believes Caroline recognized her brother's love for Jane, and deliberately pulled them apart. Elizabeth urges Jane to stay with their aunt and uncle in London. She hopes honest affection will reveal itself. If Bingley learns Jane is nearby, perhaps he will come to see her. Jane finally agrees to take the chance. She travels to London, hoping to see him again, while trying not to hope too much. Meanwhile, life at Longbourn continues, and Elizabeth must consider her own future. A good marriage cannot be created by wishful thinking. She prides herself on reading people, yet when her own heart is involved, certainty vanishes like morning fog. Even a familiar path can disappear, unless someone keeps walking toward you and reaches out through the mist. While Elizabeth is still worried about Jane, Charlotte brings astonishing news. She has accepted Mr. Collins. Elizabeth cannot understand it. Charlotte knows exactly how absurd Collins is. She once laughed with Elizabeth when Collins' first proposal was rejected, yet now Charlotte has chosen to marry him herself. Later, Elizabeth visits Charlotte at Hunsford. Charlotte explains that not every woman can afford to wait for love. She has chosen security over uncertain hope. Her marriage is not happy by Elizabeth's standard, but Charlotte is not entirely miserable. She has given up some dreams, but gained what she needs most, a home of her own, financial security, and protection in an unforgiving society. During the visit, Elizabeth is invited to dine at Rosings Park, the estate of Collins' celebrated patron, Lady Catherine. To her surprise, Darcy is there as well. Lady Catherine is his aunt, and he is visiting with Colonel Fitzwilliam. After so much time apart, Elizabeth and Darcy meet again. They barely begin speaking before Lady Catherine interrupts with another invasive question. Knowing the Bennets have limited means, she criticizes Elizabeth's upbringing. She questions her piano playing, her education, and how 5 Bennet daughters were raised without a governess. Lady Catherine finds it unimaginable. She expects a young woman of lower rank to answer meekly. Condescension comes naturally to her, and she treats Elizabeth as entertainment. What she does not expect is a calm, direct reply. Lady Catherine resents being challenged, but Elizabeth refuses to be intimidated. Later, she orders Elizabeth to play for the room, treating her more like an ornament than a guest. Elizabeth complies without pretending to be accomplished. Darcy stands beside her. Elizabeth assumes he has come to criticize her playing. Instead, their exchange becomes unexpectedly honest. For the first time, Darcy lowers his guard and admits he struggles with strangers. Elizabeth, however, answers with another challenge. Darcy begins to realize that her opinion of him is even worse than he feared. He has no idea how to change it. The next day, Darcy calls unexpectedly at the parsonage. He is visibly nervous, and his restless hands betray what his face conceals. His sentences break apart, and he cannot explain why he came. Darcy has resolved to confess his feelings, but when the moment arrives, the words fail him. When Charlotte returns, Darcy leaves abruptly. Elizabeth cannot explain his strange behavior, though his awkwardness briefly amuses her. For the first time, she wonders whether she has judged him unfairly. The thought does not last. Colonel Fitzwilliam soon reveals the truth. Bingley's departure was not Caroline's doing alone. Darcy was the main influence. Darcy believed Jane did not truly love Bingley, and he disapproved of her family's behavior and connections. For Elizabeth, this proves he deliberately separated them, believing rank gave him the right to decide. The revelation fills her with anger and a surprising sense of hurt. She cannot explain why it feels so personal. Every warmer thought vanishes, replaced by resentment. Then Darcy finds her in the rain. Their confrontation becomes the story's decisive turning point. In the storm, love and pride, hurt and arrogance, prejudice and uncertainty collide. Darcy declares his love, but dwells on her inferior connections, and how hard he fought his feelings. Elizabeth refuses, accusing him of separating Jane and Bingley, of ruining Wickham's prospect, and of insulting her family. While asking for her hand, Darcy is stunned by her answer. By the end, neither can speak calmly. The next morning, Darcy gives Elizabeth a long letter. In it, he explains everything. His father had cared deeply for Wickham, and intended to give him a valuable church living. After the elder Mr. Darcy died, Wickham said he no longer wanted the church. He took a large cash settlement instead. Within a few years, he had squandered it. He then demanded more money, but Darcy refused. Their relationship ended bitterly. The previous summer, Wickham returned with another scheme. He persuaded Darcy's 15-year-old sister, Georgiana, to consider eloping with him. His true target was her £30,000 inheritance. When Darcy uncovered the plan, Wickham abandoned it and disappeared. Georgiana was devastated. She was only 15. With every paragraph, Elizabeth's certainty crumbles. The letter becomes a key, unlocking every judgment she had sealed in place. She began reading in anger, expecting excuses, denials, and another proud attack on her family. She was ready to reject every word, even in private, but as she continues, her hands begin to tremble, not from fear, but from recognizing a truth she can no longer ignore. Days later, Jane returns from London. She calmly claims she has forgotten Bingley, and tries to change the subject by describing her stay with the Gardeners. Elizabeth immediately sees through the act. Jane's smile hides deep disappointment. That night, Elizabeth is consumed by regret. She realizes Jane's reserve made her feelings easy to misread, while Darcy let appearances and class prejudice decide Bingley's future. Knowing the truth cannot undo the harm. Later, Elizabeth travels with her aunt and uncle through Derbyshire. Mrs. Gardiner suggests visiting a nearby estate, Pemberley, Darcy's home. At the time, grand country houses often allowed respectable visitors to tour selected rooms. While the owners were away, the Gardiners, educated Londoners, are perfectly respectable guests. Elizabeth, however, is uneasy. Her relatives know nothing about Darcy's proposal or her refusal. She agrees only after being assured Darcy is away. Only then does she enter the estate. As their carriage approaches, Elizabeth is struck by how naturally Pemberley fits the landscape. The house seems to rise from the land, surrounded by woods, hills, and water. The road curves through the trees, before revealing the whole estate. All at once, Elizabeth is briefly overwhelmed by the gulf between their fortunes. Even the well-traveled gardeners are impressed. Inside, Elizabeth notices Darcy's quiet taste. The rooms and furnishings stand in sharp contrast to Lady Catherine's aggressive display of wealth. Nothing seems arranged only to impress. Elizabeth begins to understand that Darcy's pride is not simple vanity. It grew from inheritance, duty, education, and lifelong privilege. But the estate alone does not change her heart. What matters is the evidence of the man who governs it. Then Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper, offers a different view of Darcy. She speaks with genuine affection and respect. She calls him generous, even-tempered, and an excellent master and landlord. His servants admire him for the way he treats them, not because he demands praise. In that moment, his character matters more than Pemberley's splendor. And, when Elizabeth studies Darcy's portrait, she sees his face differently. Her feelings begin to shift. For the first time, she looks beyond the man who insulted her, and considers the man others know. As the tour ends, Elizabeth is startled by Darcy's unexpected return. She agreed to visit, only because she thought he was away. Mortified by the intrusion, she tries to leave. Darcy is equally surprised, but instead of turning cold, he greets her with courtesy. He follows her outside, and asks after her family. Elizabeth can barely answer, certain the meeting is a disaster. Yet Darcy remains gracious, and his attention to the gardeners shows none of his old contempt. He introduces himself, and treats them with respect. Despite their ties to trade, Elizabeth is stunned by how different he seems from the man she first met. Darcy later calls on the gardeners, and invites the whole party to dine at Pemberley. He especially asks Elizabeth to meet his sister. Back at the inn, Mrs. Gardiner praises Darcy, and questions Elizabeth's old opinion of him. Elizabeth cannot explain how completely her judgment has changed. The next day, the Gardiners return with Elizabeth. Darcy welcomes them warmly, while Georgiana waits nearby. His sister is shy, gentle, and immediately likable. Georgiana reveals that Darcy has spoken of Elizabeth often. Their conversation soon becomes easy, and Elizabeth sees Darcy as a loving brother, rather than a distant aristocrat. Beside Georgiana, Darcy smiles with rare warmth. The invitation proves his change is sincere. During the visit, Elizabeth remains cautious, but her anxiety fades. Darcy treats her aunt and uncle with genuine respect. He makes no attempt to hide his feelings for Elizabeth. The Gardiners notice his attention at once. Elizabeth also sees that he has taken her criticism seriously. His manners are gentler, his pride less defensive, and her own prejudice begins to fade. Little by little, she recognizes the qualities that make him admirable. The day ends with renewed hope. That hope collapses when an urgent letter from Jane arrives. Lydia has run away with George Wickham. They are unmarried, and Wickham's debts deepen the scandal. Mr. Bennet goes to London to find them, but the family has little money or influence. Their chances seem poor. Elizabeth tells Darcy what has happened. He turns grave and leaves soon after. She mistakes his silence for disgust toward her family, not realizing he is already deciding how to help. Lydia's elopement threatens more than her reputation. Every unmarried Bennet sister could be ruined by the scandal. Unless it is resolved, society will condemn the whole family as reckless and dishonorable. Any future between Elizabeth and Darcy, already strained by class, now seems impossible. As feared, Mr. Bennet cannot find Lydia. Then Mr. Gardiner writes, saying the couple has been found, and a marriage will be arranged. Everyone assumes Wickham demanded a large financial settlement. The moment Mrs. Bennet hears Lydia will marry, her panic turns to celebration. She wants to dress and spread the news to every neighbor. Lydia remains astonishingly careless. She does not understand the danger she caused. She proudly displays her wedding ring at every opportunity. She even tells her older sisters she hopes they will be just as lucky. Then Lydia carelessly reveals that Darcy attended the wedding. Mrs. Gardiner later explains that he found the couple, paid Wickham's debt, and arranged the marriage and a military commission. Darcy acted exactly as his servants described, quietly, responsibly, and without seeking credit. Lydia may be the first Bennet sister to marry, but her future with Wickham is uncertain. His impatience and lack of affection already expose the marriage's weakness. Soon after, Darcy Darcy returns to Netherfield with Bingley. He has admitted misreading Jane's feelings. Jane tries to expect nothing, but Bingley's renewed attention revives the family's hope. When the gentlemen arrive, the Bennet home is ready. Warm sunlight fills the room. As the sisters wait, Bingley enters first, followed by Darcy. Elizabeth tries to speak with Darcy, but he remains formal and guarded. For a moment, he seems again like the distant man she first met. Elizabeth's hope fades. She wants to explain, but cannot. Jane is equally unsettled. Bingley's first visit ends without a proposal. As he leaves, Jane fears the chance is gone. She tells herself that at least the uncertainty may finally end. Then Bingley suddenly returns. Outside, Darcy has urged him to speak honestly. This time Bingley does not hesitate. He asks Jane to marry him. She happily accepts. Everyone can see how deeply they love each other. As the household celebrates, Elizabeth cannot fully share the joy. She withdraws beneath a tree, thinking only of Darcy. She wonders whether Lydia's scandal has destroyed his feelings for her. If Darcy no longer cares, why did he return with Bingley? Her thoughts circle every possibility. Elizabeth grows frustrated with herself, and that night she cannot sleep. But the night is not over. Lady Catherine arrives without warning, furious and demanding entry. She insists on speaking to Elizabeth alone. A troubling rumor has reached her. Elizabeth may marry her nephew, Darcy. Lady Catherine finds the idea intolerable. She has long expected Darcy to marry Anne, though they were never formally engaged. Lydia's scandal only deepens her contempt for the Bennets. She accuses Elizabeth of spreading the rumor herself. Elizabeth, however, refuses to give up her future. She will not promise never to marry Darcy, and Lady Catherine leaves, more offended than when she arrived. Elizabeth cannot sleep. At dawn, she walks outside alone. The countryside is beautiful, but she feels completely isolated, uncertain whether Darcy still loves her. Then a figure emerges through the morning mist. With each step, the outline grows clearer and more familiar. Darcy has come for her. His coat is damp with dew, and mist clings to his hair. Elizabeth stands still. Lady Catherine's report gave Darcy hope. He asks whether her feelings have changed, and Elizabeth finally tells him they have. Pride and prejudice are more than personal flaws. They become a mirror for anyone who approaches love cautiously and uses sharpness as armor. Darcy learns to surrender arrogance. Elizabeth learns to question first impressions. They survive the ballroom misunderstandings, the failed proposal in the rain, and the letter that forces them to face the truth. After Mr. Bennet gives his blessing, they begin a life built on mutual respect. Though written centuries ago, the story's emotions still feel immediate. Perhaps that is because many people protect themselves like Elizabeth, using judgment to hide vulnerability. Others resemble Darcy, longing to be understood beneath an awkward reserve. Love does not demand a life without mistake. It asks whether, after traveling so far, two people will still turn back toward each other. Even through uncertainty, they learn to recognize an offered hand. May we all find the courage to love honestly and choose relationships built on respect.